Well, look, welcome. If it's your first time, London Tech Leaders, we're an events platform for the leadership community across the UK market. We've also got a peer-to-peer kind of content platform, which shares kind of podcasts, contributing authors, and much kind of resources for the leadership community.
Okay, hi everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces. And for those who know me, please no heckling. Actually, we like a good heckle, so. We've got a great panel this evening. Got some interesting topics to cover. As ever, if you disagree, agree, just want to stir it up a bit, stick your hand up. We'll try and get you to ask an interesting question to challenge us all a little bit. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves in a minute, but for those who don't know me, I'm David Crawford. I'm the Group CTO of Naked Wines. We're a direct-to-consumer wine business in the UK, Australia and America. And we're trying to disrupt the wine business a little bit and get great wine from independent winemakers to everyday wine drinkers. That's our mission. And I've got a long history of working in technology. I used to be a developer, but I've been promoted to my level of technical incompetence. On that note, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves.
For the last couple of decades, I've been starved from getting good, healthy financing from commercial banks. We built a software platform, ML and data science at its core, to help global commercial banks lend faster, smarter, and in higher volumes. We licensed that platform through a SaaS product that we market globally. We've been in business just about 3 years, and I've been there the whole time. So that's me.
Thanks, Jason.
Hi, I'm Tom Winstanley. I'm the CTO of NTT Data. We're part of the NTT Group. It's the Japanese BT, just way cooler. And the NTT Data Group within that is not tiny in its own right, about 130,000 employees globally, consulting, systems integration across a whole range of different industries. Here in the UK, we work a lot in the telecommunications industry, as you could imagine, but also banking, insurance, manufacturing, automotive, and a whole slew of others. I think what's unusual about us as a group is that we're still, as a consulting systems integration organisation, still heavily invested in core R&D. We invest about $3.5 billion a year into that, most of it in Japan, to be transparent, but also a whole chunk here in Europe, and I'm lucky enough to be involved in that part of our business too.
Great, thanks, Tom.
Hi, I'm Milena. I'm CTO at Trainline. Our mission is to connect people and places, enabling more sustainable travel choices. We retail train tickets direct to consumers. We also offer rail platform to train operating companies, and we also distribute our catalog of rail journeys to pretty much anyone in the travel industry. Before Trainline, actually only until a couple of months ago, I was at Google for more than a decade, for so long that I stopped counting, where I was an engineer for many years, eventually moving into engineering leadership, and for the last couple of years I was engineering director there in charge of Google Play developer ecosystem.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, so let's get into it. A heavy question straight away. In the next 5 years, how will artificial intelligence, machine learning, and of course the data that underpins that, change the way businesses serve their customer? So, there's a few buzzwords in there, right? And we're all talking about it all of the time. It feels like data is heading towards becoming a commodity, and our internal customers, stakeholders are pretty intolerant if it's not on tap available to them all the time. And the machine learning is like taking that and going a little bit further, right? Is this a panacea for all ills? Are we at the start of it? Has it gone too far? Where do you think it is? Why don't we kick off with you with that, Milena?
Is it a buzzword? It can be. I think sometimes it is. I think it's obviously equally incredibly valuable tool for us as technologists to build better products. I do think it's often misunderstood. I think it's often talked about as a holy panacea that's going to solve all the world's problems, which I don't think is the case. I think there are problems which are obviously extremely well suited to machine learning or AI type solutions. I think there are companies out there that have made this the center of their offering. You know, their offering wouldn't exist or wouldn't be anywhere relevant or as good if they weren't implementing things in machine learning or AI driven way. I would say probably for majority of the companies that, in my opinion, may very well not be the case, which doesn't mean that they wouldn't get the value out of ML solutions. I think for many companies, there is an optimization layer in various aspects of their product or technical systems in which they will get some value through ML, but it's kind of more incremental. And then I think there is probably a set of tech companies or companies in general that would get very little value and would probably waste more time on kind of playing around with solutions like this. So I just kind of, as always, I think this is a valuable tool that all of us as technology leaders need to consider. You know, for some of us, the answer will be yes, go big and double down, and really make this the center of what you do. For some will be kind of let's kind of get something out of this, and then for some, I think very validly the answer would be just this is a distraction right now and trendy buzzword that I'm not going to spend any time on.
Right. Tom, Milena says that there are some companies who sort of center themselves around that. Data is in the name of your company. Are you one of those companies?
Yeah, set up for that one, really, weren't we? So, yes and no. For us as an organisation, obviously, data, as you say, it's in the name. We came out of a huge telecommunications organisation doing computing in the 80s, basically. That's kind of the history of the group. And as a result, we've been on kind of every wave of data to big data to data on tap to commoditized data to solutions and platforms that sit on top. I think it's fair to say at the moment, though, that we are, I think, as an industry, still just scratching the surface of what will be viable and will be done. I do agree with what you're saying about, for some organisations, it's you double down and other not so much. But I actually think that it's going to be more about haves and have-nots. So there's going to be the organisations that are deprived because they haven't invested the right amount of time and energy into it, and there are those organisations that are already massively down that route and it's core to what they're doing as an organisation, and it is the product. Probably we might hear a little bit of that from my co-panellist here. As I say, lots and lots of organisations that we work with are already well down that journey, for sure, and we're helping them with that, with if it's data science platforms or if it's about the even kind of verticalized solutions that address particular problems. Increasingly, the tech is commoditized thanks to the likes of Google and others in the mix. It is the core enablers are just there, and every organisation, frankly, should be getting on board with understanding how they can use those components, be it computer vision elements, be it predictive modelling, be it whatever element. They're all pretty ubiquitously available, but obviously the challenge is plugging it all together and making sense of it. I'm going to be the first one to get probably a in the audience, but it is all about the use cases that you're actually going to apply it to, right? Whoa. So there we go. Thank you. Yeah. The tech is increasingly mature, viable, easy to get on tap. Working out what you want to do with it is most of the challenge.
So I guess that might be true for some companies who are the size of your company, right? Who have it in the bag. But there are other companies who are coming out of a place where they don't have it and have got to retrofit it. Mm-hmm. And then there's companies like Oak North who presumably were founded on data-driven, data-led, and machine learning. I mean, you have to have it for breakfast every day, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's also just a coincidence of when we were founded.
Right.
So, okay. So I think having been through the many epochs of data as well, I think to answer the question, where are we at the moment? I think it's very early doors. I do. So I think the decade ahead will be marked by really giant companies emerging in what you might call applied ML, right? Where your product is the outcome that you're providing a customer is sort of intrinsically a machine learning driven solution. Okay, and there are examples of this today, but they have been retrofitted. I'd say that because it's early doors, you see lots of vendors chasing problems, and that creates a lot of confusion, I think, for businesses that have been established. So do I actually need machine learning to solve this problem or that problem? Do I need to do it in-house, or can I license it? These are questions that increasingly I think businesses are answering in a more mature way. So you mentioned the optimization layer. We've gone from I have to optimize my own email sending to I can license off-the-shelf products that will help me do that, to I can actually just outsource the whole thing to a company that can do that personalization better than I can. So I think we're still in this early days, but the pioneering efforts, commercial efforts in particular, I think that are interesting to look at from here are the invention of data, right? So data is a commodity, but so is the tooling that you're talking about. So the only way to get a leg up is by finding data that's only available to you, data that you can't buy off the shelf, right? So the interesting business models for me that are underappreciated, they're underappreciated both commercially in terms of licensing, but also from investment in the venture circles, are companies that are able to compose data in ways that other companies can't get, right? Data sets that Google doesn't have, right? That kind of thing. So that's something I think that I find quite interesting in terms of where we are today and looking forward. Those types of models.
It's really interesting that you're saying we're almost at the start of a journey. It sort of feels like going back to the days when we talked about big data. Nobody knew what that was, but we talked about big data, and then we all went out and bought a tool, and then we asked about for 5 years and got nowhere, and then we went, now let's do it again, right? Yes. And it feels like machine learning is possibly the answer. Just out of interest from our audience, by a show of hands, how many of you have messed about with machine learning? And then just leave your hands up for a second. Put your hand down if you've not taken that into productization, into production systems, if it was literally just messing about and you couldn't really find an application for it in your business. Okay, so maybe about a third of hands went down at that point. And I think that's almost, we've gone through Naked Wines, we've gone through a bit of a journey where we've gone, machine learning is really important to us. Sometimes I feel like we've got a solution looking for a problem there, yeah? And I like, I think what I just heard from you is almost like I might sit back a bit and wait and see what other people do and help me out a little bit, and then just go and buy it as a service almost, So, all right, great. I think we might have had a question back there. I'm not sure we're going to microphone. You're just going to have to go big voice.
Usually a problem. I guess artificial intelligence is a bit nebulous, really. I'm going to trot out a load of things that you've probably heard, but I agree with them. It's an evolution, not a revolution, and you're no longer entitled to say you're doing AI because you're doing some data science and some machine learning, unless you're taking it to the next level and doing machine reasoning and the stuff that Google's doing. You just, like I say, that part of it is now ubiquitous. The data science and machine learning is now accessible on tab. But the next level, where we actually get the machines to figure out what's going on, to think more like humans do, so actual genuine artificial intelligence rather than just, hey, I trained a model to recognise tanks, and now it recognises tanks unless the weather changes, that kind of issue.
Kind of that shift.
The example you may or may not be familiar with, but it's that kind of...
Well, kind of the shift from kind of narrow AI to more generalised AI, I guess, is a way of talking about it. I thought...
Machine reasoning is the next level of evolution that's very hard. It's not available off the shelf.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm conscious you were talking about your optimization layer.
Right.
And I suspect that's probably somewhere in that same space, right?
Yeah. I think actually the science, that's why I don't use the term AI, right? It's not only does it sound funny, it's also, it is that view of computer reasoning. And I think, and you just sound kind of funny when you talk about doing AI, right? I think it's a long way off, right, from what I can tell, right? Whether you're going to call that artificial general intelligence, or you're going to the singularity. I think part of the struggle is there's not a lot of money in it, right? There's a lot of research money going into it, but
it needs momentum.
Yeah.
It needs momentum and it needs use cases.
Yeah.
Before people will throw money at it like they're throwing it at things that are easier.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
I just wanted to, having worked for many years for a company that pays an awful lot of engineers to solve singularity, it's kind of, I feel I probably shouldn't comment on this too much. Not because I know any of the smart answers at all, but just because feels awkward. But I think there is other side of this, which I think is genuinely interesting to me personally right now, which is the challenges now that ML, not to talk about AI, putting that to the side, a lot of interesting challenges with ML which go beyond figuring out the details of the algorithms we're going to use and wherever we're going to use them. For example, the problem with biases we're seeing in kind of our ML models. And the problems with data quality, and kind of what are we feeding to these models to learn stuff out of. So I think that's a very interesting one where it's kind of like, I feel almost each company is still solving that individually on its own, for its own domain, for its own context. And I think that's one really interesting side of it that I feel is still pushing the boundaries. Even though you can get some of these commoditized components, I think that it feels like everyone is still genuinely solving that as a problem. And then the other one that I wanted to call out related to that, if I can only remember now, so there is the biasing and I can't remember, but there are I feel a few of these problems that are still kind of out there. Even if components are available, I think we're still dealing with some of the challenges.
I think context is a fantastic word to apply to this, because once you add that context, that's how you solve those problems. Once the AI understands the context that you're asking it the problem in.
Yeah, I would agree. On that front, I think though. I don't know what you guys think, but I think we're still a long way away from that. I think that, if I think about, there's some companies that are doing stuff in that space, but as an industry, as a whole, that's why I say there are the haves and the have-nots in this context in the next few years. But I'll just bring it to life a little bit with an example. So of work that we're doing around that issue of explainability to an extent, but bias and so on. So we run a program out of the States. It's called AI Advocacy Program, and it's in our healthcare practice. So we have a division do that. We've got one of the largest neutral image archives globally, 13 billion records from over 1,000 hospitals across the US. And increasingly, obviously, there's this huge hype about the use of machine learning, computer vision for diagnostics in health, and there are lots and lots and lots and lots of companies doing stuff, obviously Google amongst them, but also lots of smaller organizations. And the issue with that is that people believe that these solutions they've nailed it. It's all done. They already think that we're at that point that you're talking about, reasoning and so on. Sorry?
Statistically, they're incredible, and they show statistically the image recognition for diagnostics in healthcare shows amazing returns. And just unfortunately, sometimes it still gets it wrong.
Exactly, and so I mean, what we've
so does the alternative.
Totally, which is why what we're doing in that context is we put a program together to effectively be the let's call it the testing and an analytics partner around. We have this huge clinical archive. To your point about data sets that are not necessarily viably easily accessible to key players. Using that with the partners that are involved, all of the hospitals involved, to drive a program of visibility around what's frankly real and what is just not clinically viable. So anyway.
Okay, we're going to move on. That was the big technical, heavy-hitting question. So you can relax now, right? Now we're going to get to the slightly interesting, but hopefully more simple to answer stuff. Maybe.
We could probably talk all night about this question.
Yeah, no. You could, but we can come back to it if we get time. But let's just think about organisations a bit first, right? So this is our second face-to-face for this, and so we're clearly out of the pandemic. Don't read the news today, and we're all returning back to normal. And we were having a chat the other day about remote working and offices and. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling the pressure of allowing people to remain remote. Thank you, Tom. Brilliant, lovely. Allowing people to continue to remote work, and that feels like a retention strategy now for me. It feels like, okay, we've invested in all these people, and they all want to work from home, and if I say no, then they're all going to leave me and go and work for somebody else, right? But then we've got maybe some stakeholders who aren't technologists returning to the office, maybe the marketing team, or in my case, the wine buying team, or whatever, and they're all gung-ho to get back to the office, and they're there, and they want to know where their support mechanism is from product and technology and all that kind of stuff. And so their sort of demands are like, no, we'd quite like you to come into the office and stuff. How are we going to balance that? Where are we going to win? Where are we going to lose? Is it something we even need to worry about? Will this just play itself out and we don't have to worry about it and we just have to keep up? What are your thoughts? Why don't you go with that first, Jackson?
If I had a crystal ball, I'd tell you the direct answer. I don't. No, that's unfortunate. I think it's more the latter, though. I do. I think what we're seeing is the Great Resignation with a capital R feels like that's a short-lived moment, and it's been a super emotional time for everybody, right? Like everybody's had a lot of time to think about their lives, and it can be natural that many people have found themselves wondering if they should do something different. So, but I don't think that that's going to become a perpetual question every single year. How can I hopscotch to the next best thing with the next best policy? I just see this as the natural benefits of being together. Better collaboration, not feeling like you're left out. I think this is like the marketing team's there and I'm not there, what's going on? I think these will naturally will start to encourage people to come back. So the model we've adopted, just for reference, right, is the hybrid model. It's not novel. Most companies are doing this. And we've left it very loose, right? It's going to be optimized by teams. Teams will decide, both individuals with their managers, but also as a team, like how often should they come back to the office? How much will that person or this person be at home, and when will they come into the office? Avoid codifying it, right? Because I think what we're already seeing is people who are like, I'm never going to come in. I'm just going to stay, remote. Like they're in the office tonight. I see them. Like, and it's fine because I think there's going to be this natural pullback. I don't think we're going back to where we were though. I think that there has been a structural change. And I think companies have seen that a hybrid model through a forced remote work setup has actually been more valuable. Higher productivity and thought work, probably a decrease in collaboration and a decrease in both mental health and team health. So we need to sort of supplement that with getting people back socializing, back in person.
And I think I'm seeing a bit of that. I think that people are breaking through that first time of coming back, then doing, where they just say hi, and then they do the second time and they're like, oh, I remember how this is, and then they miss their home desk, right? And then they do that, and then they get bored. And I think hybrid is where people are going to be attracted to. Right. And that'll be different things for different companies, but it's definitely, I think actually for those companies, a lot of them have gone very bold. Might be some of your companies gone out there and said, no, we're total remote first, that's it. I think actually that's going to turn off as many people as it turns on, right? Tom, what do you think about this?
Well, your last point, absolutely. So we had this debate probably 3 months ago now. So when we were just beginning to reopen and work through how are we going to do it? What's the right balance? It was interesting from a leadership perspective as well how different the perspectives were in a team. You found me as the CTO, our chief delivery officer, effectively our chief operating officer. Probably more on the introverted side of things, quite comfortable with. Oh yeah, I could do this forever. This is fine. I'm quite comfortable with this. Our chief sales officer, our chief executive officer, they had a very, very different perspective on no, this is not the way that we can run a business. The interaction, social interaction, all the rest, etc. So we of course have also landed in a hybrid model. We've invested. I mean, we're a large organisation that's always had a distributed workforce anyway. So the leap from having a team that's partially based in Bangalore, another part in Cluj in Transylvania in Romania, a third part then here in the UK to fully remote was not completely transformational for us as an organisation. It was something that we were anyway doing, but what we're really investing the time in now is finding ways to positively encourage people to come back in. And so that's about, actually it's about the social side of things as much as anything else. We're finding that we're bringing people in for evening sessions, for networking sessions, for collaboration around particular themes, that kind of thing. But the other area where we think that it is where we can't stick with a full remote mode is actually in developing the next generation of engineers. Yes, you can work offline, you can do an awful lot that way, but you do learn from the people around you. And again, it's one thing with me, kind of comfortable middle-aged guy, lives in West London in a it's West London, so they're still relatively small, but a comfortable place, decent house, have a room that I can go to. I've got engineering teams across the business where they're sitting in a flat with 4 other guys sharing the internet connection and all the rest. That's not a viable model for them either. So it's not all rosy on that side. I think even for the generation that I think we're all using as an argument for they're going to want full remote and work wherever they want, whenever they want.
So we're gonna ask Milena to answer that question in a second. But what I'm wondering here is that how are we going to address in that case if we're all like, as leaders we think hybrid and then a bit more and it'll become a natural thing. How are we going to address the current issue where people are looking at it as a job-defining criteria, right? I mean, all of the job sites have changed. They used to have home. What did they have? They used to have office-based part-time, and now they've got remote, right? And as a choice. And so it's people are saying that's as important to me as a pizza, or as important to me as a pool table, or whatever the other things are that people want. So how do we bridge that gap until it settles back down, basically? What do you think about that, Milena?
I don't have that much to add to the original part of the question. Boringly, I actually agree with everything Jackson and Thomas said. But this is like I know. I wanted to disagree, but this is the all said smart thing. So I just gotta agree with that. I can't tell to what level I genuinely want people back in the office because I personally enjoy it versus genuinely believing that that's what's going to happen. But I do think actually it's going to move back to somewhere closer, not where we were, but somewhere closer to the original state where maybe we do 3 days in the office on average. The thing that I find most funny about this is when we did a survey around my team, how people would like this handled. Pretty much everyone said, I would like to come in whenever I want. But every time when I come in, I want everyone else to be there, which is obviously unsolvable problem. So it's kind of, just that sort of convinced me that, we will piss some people off, at least temporarily. To answer your second question, actually, I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think people are complaining more than are actually ready to, pick up their stuff and go quit in masses. That's at least kind of what we are seeing so far. I think my company has taken a possibly a bit more aggressive approach than most of the tech world, we are not mandating anything, but we are recommending people come for 3 days. Kind of there's like a company day on Wednesdays, and then 2 other days they can pick and choose. People have sort of gradually been coming back. No one's quite keeping attendance and kind of all that, but people have been coming back. Have also been applying more of a carrot model than a stick model. So a lot of breakfasts and parties and kind of things to motivate people to come back. But yes, I'm not seeing people really kind of pick up and throw their toys out of a pram and kind of go quit and go elsewhere. Some surely will. I think it might be one of those decisions that they regret, a few years down the line when the career slows down or kind of ends up being derailed in other ways. But it's just very hard to be sure how these things are going to go.
It's interesting that Tom and Milena both said that you're quite comfortable. So you're not just the people in charge, but you're role models, of course. People are looking at you and saying, well, how are they behaving? What are they doing? I'm in a similar position. I think, my children have grown up and left the house, so my house is nice and quiet. I've got a proper office and a garden I can go and walk around if it gets a bit crazy.
Advantages of Norfolk.
Advantages of Norfolk. There had to be one. Anyway, and I think, Tom, to your point, is that not everybody's in that situation. And as leaders, and this applies to lots of leadership things, sometimes we've got to go, doesn't suit me personally, but I've got to model the right behaviours that I want and stimulate that. So are we going to have to grin and bear this? Are we going to have to, put our pyjamas to one side and get in the office? Is that what we've got to do?
Well, I mean, that's certainly what we're doing. As I say, it's going to be a gradual process. We're doing it bit by bit. And to your point about are we going to lose out on the top talent to do that? I think there will be a bit of that for sure. I don't also foresee that we're going to get to a point of that we are mandating. I don't think that's not the kind of organisation we are. I do think that there will be a level of therefore also self-selection in our recruitment process as a result. And actually, that's fine. People, we need across our engineering divisions, people that are going to match that model, I think. I mean, that's,
I mean, it becomes part of your culture, right? And people will have to buy into your culture or not.
Right, that's right. So, I mean, I think it is a conscious decision, and one that we didn't take lightly but where, if that's not attractive to you, that hybrid flavour and, the highly collaborative side of the way that we're working, then it's probably not going to fly. I mean, again, just back to that first point, with an organisation with massively distributed teams anyway, it's not as if we've ever mandated everybody to be in one place to be successful at engineering. That's not what it's about. Sorry.
Yeah. Just make one. I'll try to spice it up a bit here. So the one thing I would say is I think it's the other side that's going to fail. Companies are going to fail to operate a remote workforce because that takes a lot of effort and a totally different philosophical approach, right? And some companies have done that really well. You look at like GitLab, right? Like founded as a remote only, cherish it, like leadership, people join because it's remote only. It takes a ton of effort and your ways of working have to change, right? You have to have a different, frankly, just a different cost model in your business as well to be able to operate it. So I don't think it's as easy to just be like, because we went under duress home for a year, we can just do that forever and be as profitable and grow the same way and as healthy in terms of culture. So I think it's actually the companies, the management, I'm going to look at us, who are going to fail. The employees, rather than this is going to be a panacea for the employees coming into this model.
I think you're right. And I think, I'm hoping that the audience, as they've actually, come out, I mean, I've seen several of them wearing slippers, but if as they've come out, hopefully they kind of agree with that. Do we have a question from somebody?
I'm not certain it builds on what Jackson said, but I just wondered whether you were doing anything specific about your early career people. So we're really, I'm super worried about my grads who joined 12 months ago. They have now seen us once or twice, but it's been really different for them than it has been for everybody else who are 5 years in, and it's easier for them to learn stuff remotely. And I think, Malene, you sort of touched on that earlier, but I just wonder if you've done anything specific about your early stage people.
Well, I can just say very quickly, our grads and in fact our intern core are the only ones in the office 5 days a week. Like bucking the trend of the generalized, you know.
But also
So,
then the people who haven't got the space at home, they haven't got.
well, yeah,
and all this stuff.
and they need to be absorbing energy from the teams.
But to Tom's point, if the other teams aren't there, if the more experienced people in your team aren't there, and they might be learning the wrong thing amongst themselves.
Yeah, it's actually a great learning for us and other companies who are trying to do this. Is that's a new way of working, that's a new model. You have to focus on it. How are you gonna get people growth, right? If they're the consumers of the energy in the organization rather than the producers, right? How do you do it? So I'm not saying we got the answers yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a similar boat in so much as our kind of onboarding academies and so on are. They did run remote through a chunk of the pandemic just by necessity, but are now back in large part, but not 5 days a week. So we're still on 3 days a week with that. To the point about modelling. Kind of modelling behaviours in this context. We've deliberately also there brought in there are a bunch of our leaders who are on the ground, will be on the ground. They also, again, back to the point about culture of this, they want to be on the ground with the people. There are the advantages, of course, of complete remote working and all this, but we also get energy from it. I mean, it would be odd as I love the buzz of that collaborative experience, and when you for me I had a moment it was about 4 months ago, I think 4 or 5 months ago, when we were running a workshop for a client. It was a super, we had spent maybe 3 weeks preparing for this 1 day collaborative, creative workshop with a bunch of people from across this client's organisation. It was all, it was highly interactive. We'd got Miro stuff. We'd got all kinds of video content. We'd got bits and pieces of games for interactivity in the middle to get their feedback and I came out of it and I thought, wow, that's an absolutely brilliant. We can do this. Of course we can do this. It's just super easy. The following day, I then had, it was actually with one of our grad teams, a session in the office where we got around a whiteboard and worked through a problem with them, and I suddenly was like, oh shit, no, that's definitely the way to do this. That's definitely better. So,
And I think what I'm hearing is that it's not really a problem and we don't have to worry about this longer term. But between now and when it settles to whatever it is, we're still going to have to put a bit of effort in, aren't we, to do things like make sure there are the right levels of experience in the office, make sure that we're teeing it up and encouraging people, and I think that's the thing. It's not done yet. It's not settled yet. And we're going to have to make effort.
Yeah, the only clarification there is I don't think we're going back to where we were. I think we do have to put the effort in, which will be lasting, around this a hybrid approach, a more flexible approach. Yeah. So,
Just the last thing I'm going to say on this, I promise, is engineers are very reasonable people, I would say. As someone who was an engineer for many years, that's what I like to believe, and I'm sticking to it. But it's like I find it very, if you just put something out there and say, you gotta show up, they will argue with you and they'll say, but this doesn't make any sense. We have been working perfectly fine for the last 18 months. Why are you making me do this? But I think when you try to explain and use examples like, listen, we have this class of new grads and interns and someone needs to teach them. It is part of your job to teach more junior people and to educate them and all that. When you explain that whole thing or tell them did you really enjoy that session on the Miro when you had to do the brainstorming, or is whiteboard better? And did you miss playing football and making technical decisions around there, or actually having to schedule yet another 11th hour meeting to make another decision? And I think when you line all of those things up, engineers are reasonable and they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll put up with 1.5 days in the office, just it's you can make a point.
Know your audience. I think rational, not reasonable. But I think you're. Yeah.
We're going to have if it's a quickie we can go, or we've got to move on in a second. But go for it.
Keep it really brief because airtime. But basically, I think you might have solved the problem if you've somehow what you've taken away from it is to move away from presenteeism, whether that's physical presenteeism or virtual presenteeism, as we're now seeing in remote organisations. People don't have to be there at 8:59 to achieve good things in the tech industry. They have to be there long enough to do the job, and they have to deliver good outcomes. And if you can get away from that kind of bums on seats mentality where it's not needed, you know, the whole idea of a bunch of interns being in the office because they have to be there and every other bugger being at home, you know, it's that, you know, we're starting to be more pragmatic about whether it's.
And I think that's what we've heard here. I think we've heard that. I don't think anybody said, you know, that you have to be at your desk 9 to 5. It's about, there was like several reasons for going in the office. I'm conscious that gent had a quick thing.
This is brilliant, because this is super relevant to us as a company, because we always said as an engineering team, so let me start by saying we're a company of two arms, right? So we're an engineering-led company, but we also have legal and HR and finance and all those guys who love everything in Microsoft and we love everything on Mac. Okay, so we're two different worlds. And we've always said we can work remotely because Pinterest did it, because GitLab did it, because it's been done. And we just lack the tools and the skills. We can build that because we're iterative and agile and all that good stuff. And we went away and did it, we came back. But we're still two companies. And we don't, as engineers, so I'm in the engineering community in cyber reliability, we don't really want to be in the office all the time. But we don't want to be away. Right. So we've kind of said, well, pick a day. That if you're going to be in the office only one day a week, make it that day. We polled the whole community. We picked 2 days actually because we went kind of proportional representation to first and second choice. So Friday and Wednesday were the 2 choices. So if you're going to be in one of those 2 days, and the odds are you're going to meet somebody. We believe in the collaboration part. But what I want to ask the team is, in terms of fixing the problem where there are people who just want to be in the office 5 days a week with bums on seats is what they believe. And this extends up to the C-suite, by the way, in many cases. How can we fix the problem where the people who build the product know they don't have to be in, and the people who don't want to be in all the time? And exactly like you said earlier on, right? They're like, where are my engineers? They're at home. Where do you expect them to be, right? Well, are they working right now? I don't know. We've got a Jira board, right? They're delivering tickets. You'll get product when we say you're going to get it. So, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, the fellow from Oak North, because you're speaking a lot of our language through a funded startup. But it's just as interesting to hear from Google's perspective and Entity Data's perspective and Trainline's perspective.
Yeah, I think even when we were bums in seats, I still had the CEO asking what the engineers were doing. So I think that problem doesn't go away. Actually, you know, how can you find seasoned engineering leadership to build relationships within the organization is the answer.
And show value, right? You have to show that.
It's that. So outcomes that have commercial value. Like we were, actually going to answer it very practically, right? So I had to answer to my board during COVID, the lockdown, right? You got to be prudent. So I would produce a list of reports, not just for the engineering and product functions, but also for some of the operating teams like our sales teams. Metrics. What are people doing, right? Now, you'll know that the wrong way to do that with a group of engineers is to say, here's your metric, right? So back to we talk, I think what you're hearing here is a lot about empowerment is coming back into view here, right? Rational people who are smart will make good decisions if they have the context. Sorry, I'm linking everything together, right? So we went to our engineers and said, what do you think the right measurement is? This is untrodden territory, like we're all at home, you know, working on our laptops. What is the right measure? No, it's not lines of code. No, it's not cycle time. And no, it's not velocity. So what is it, right? And we ended up on a basket of metrics around customer outcomes, customer satisfaction, you know, the ratings that we get within the product on usage, that kind of thing. So like, I guess the answer is it's like kind of an age-old problem. Maybe it was made worse by not having physical presence, but you still got to do all of those. You got to just trust teams to get on with it. But you've also got to keep an eye out if you're in engineering leadership, right? To how do I show the rest of the company every single day, every single week, that I am. For some people, it's I'm just working rather than I'm delivering. But like if you focus on delivery, then that will cascade all the way up to the C-suite.
You have to kind of say, but look at what we're delivering, look at the value we're creating.
I mean, I would totally subscribe to that. And indeed, again, the answer to the members of the leadership team that didn't perhaps have the same perspective at the start was we are demonstrably more efficient through lockdown on those first set of metrics, which again is not the right thing, and to the point that we actually also all together as a leadership team realised that was a concern. That was actually an issue. People were working too hard. We needed to build in. Yeah. I like the idea. I like the point around your kind of customer satisfaction outcomes on that side. But we've really upped also our kind of let's call them internal metrics about employee satisfaction and well-being and track that. We've got one of the tools that everybody can just exactly all of that. Super important. And was, as I say, that actually was the trigger for our CEO, who I love, great guy. He realised, he said, okay, this is my preference. I get it's my preference, but you've all shown me on all counts that we can make this work differently.
Okay, so that sets us up nicely for the next question. See what I did there? And thank you. I think what we were talking about a lot there, particularly the working with non-technology colleagues, right? Technology is definitely becoming more and more core. We saw a lot of acceleration during the pandemic where people needed to use more technology. And I think the question isn't, do we deserve a seat at the table? Because that's a 5-second answer, right? Yeah, I think we're all like, yes, we should be at the table. And people expect us. The question is, are we ready to have a seat at the table, right? Without casting aspersions on our lovely audience, some of us grew up as hairy-assed engineers, right? Mm-hmm. And have we got the right output? And maybe not you, Milena, but I don't know. Let's not get into that, right? But it's have we got the gravitas to be in the boardroom, and do we deserve to be there, or should we report through the COO or the CFO or whatever, right? Or are we good enough? Are we ready to play?
It's really funny. If you asked me this question a couple of months ago, after my decade-long career in big tech, I would be like, "What are you talking about? Like, tech runs the show. Like, we get to call all the shots. I don't get it. We are the, having now moved to a more, I guess, commercially driven company. Company doesn't have gazillion % margins, but more reasonable ones. It's I do understand the question now, so I get it. I think I must say, I'm actually, and this, I think this will hopefully answer your question. I'm actually loving now being in a position where my CFO does ask me, what are all those engineers in your team doing? What are they like? Is this making any difference? What are you going to ship next month? And what's going to, I think there is a lot of respect for the amazing people that we hire onto our teams to then actually put them onto something that creates a lot of value. And that's, it's kind of, I guess the answer to your question is probably in many cases, we may not quite be ready, because I have certainly seen many, many examples where, my engineers left to their own means might go and just toy around with some technology or, do the stuff that probably, if you're really honest, isn't making a ton of difference. Mm-hmm. And again, I can say this because I was one of those for many years, so just kind of, not criticizing anyone. So yeah, it's kind of, it's a tricky one. Are we ready? Some of us are ready. Some of us, I'm sure there are fantastic technical leaders that can, that can have that seat at the table and really kind of earn it and really make a difference for the business. I think there are also a lot of technical leaders who may not quite enjoy that responsibility at all, who just kind of, whose joy and motivation comes from actually, exploring and, kind of playing with technology, making a difference for the customer, even if it's not the most commercially optimized solution and kind of all that. So sorry, I don't know if this is satisfactory, but it's kind of, I wish I could be more like cheerleading and say, yes, we're all ready and we should just all be running the shows. I don't think that's always universally true.
No, I give you that, but you just said something about, engineers maybe left to their own devices might not do things that are necessarily great for the company. but they're all paid by the company. We're all on the same mission. You touched on this point, right? We're all trying to achieve the same goals. And we've all got engineers who work for us who are like, don't just tell me what to do, tell me why I'm doing it, right? And they really want to know the mission that they're on and why they're doing that sort of thing. So they want that, and then you say, and now can you turn up and explain to us what you're doing? And they're like, not me, mate, I can't, no, just trust it's magic, sort of thing. How are you tackling that sort of thing, Tom?
Well, I think that's true. I mean, I think I should say up front that amongst my co-panelists, I am the least techie. So, although I've been in software engineering my entire career, my background is in business. I got into it through realising quite how difficult it was to solve those problems that that came out of the heads of the business people. That's how I kind of got into it and have love it from that point of view. But are we ready for it? So as a group of people ready? I think the things that are often that could be missing. There are three things. Is a little bit of humility and not necessarily. We don't always have. I know we kind of think we always have the answers, but we probably don't quite always have the answers. And that's because the guys on the other side, they're not on the other side. The other parts of the organisation are, they're coming with valuable and different insights, and it kind of needs to feed together. Empathy as a result, again, not necessarily classically in the kit bag, in spades, and something that needs to be worked at, I think, as people. And there's some people want to do that more, and some less for sure. But then the other side actually is backbone, and I think that interestingly, that's something that does come more readily to this community because they command and understand the meat and potatoes of how to make it happen. And so backbone on its own is no good because you're not going to get there, but backbone with empathy and humility, that's what it takes, I think, to play that well.
And you've got to have one of those translation machines to do the tech to English thing, right? Is that,
Sure. Yeah. So I'll I think no. I think I'm gonna include leadership, tech leadership here only, because I think it's above their remit as an engineer to have to deal with these sorts of problems. But sure. I think we suffer from an exceptionalism problem, and I think it holds organizations back, and I think it holds us as a profession back. I really do. But it's a weird exceptionalism because it roots itself in a bit of ignorance and not wanting to take the time or having empathy for the rest of the C-suite, for example. And that definitely limits you as an individual leader. It limits the leadership team, and it limits the company. So it's kind of this strange thing. Like, let me put it this way. You think it like a marketing event, like a marketing talk with marketing executives. They're like, should we have a seat at the leadership table? They don't ask that question, right? They don't, right? Because they've found like a medium to express their leadership and their value to the company. And for whatever reason, tech's not new anymore, people. Like, we should be able to explain the value and should be able to just have the seat at the table and not be like questioning whether or not we should, right? So I think there's definitely this element of like this dichotomy of exceptionalism, but actually lack of confidence that we can be valuable to the business. So one tip I would have, right, is find the common medium, right? So what's a common medium in most businesses is we're all here to solve a problem for a customer. If we can all understand the customer and speak about the customer's need, the customer's problem, then I think that's an interesting way to like bridge and have the seat at the table that matters. What can technology bring to the problem? What can marketing bring to the problem? What does our sales team bring, right? How can our people operations team help solve these problems? Like, as long as you stay anchored on like the customer problem, there's a medium, right? There are other more boring mediums like money. You can all understand the cost and benefit of work you're doing. Like, that's another way to express it. It's not as fun, not as sexy, but I actually think part of this challenge here is like maybe we need to move beyond and not ask ourselves the question, should we be leaders, right?
And I mean, I think that's really a good way of looking at it. And I hadn't really thought. I mean, do all the other disciplines not ask themselves these questions? I guess not, right? They just assume they should be there and they've earned the right.
I can tell you, no sales conference would ever ask that question of themselves.
That'd be funny. I wouldn't know. I've never been to a sales conference. So I mean, I think it's. So we're clearly all passionate about wanting to be there, and I think Milena's point about some are okay with that and some aren't okay with that. I mean, I think that I've got a bit of a view that I actually, depends what kind of company you are, but if you're one of these companies that are saying, we're a technology company first and we just happen to sell wine, I'm not sure my company quite says that, but sometimes we feel like that, right? I want the other people around the board to know a bit about technology. I want them to trust me and my team to deliver technology, but I want them to be a bit invested as well. And so, yeah, I've got to be able to speak their language, but I want them to meet me halfway. Is that unreasonable?
No, not at all. It goes both directions, of course. Yeah.
Not the sales guys, obviously.
No, and we no, exactly. Well, but we sit, yeah. Well, even them, right? We sit on the gravity has shifted, right? So they sort of need to come even further, right? Because look, if you sit in a marketing team, what are you using, right? You're using technology right now. Digital marketing and optimization is all technology, right? So they do need to walk that direction. And if they're reticent to do that, then you need to be also challenging and say, look, I'm here trying to understand your world. You got to understand mine, right? Back to empathy. So absolutely, I think it's a two-way street. I just think that we suffer for whatever reason a bit more from this. Like we maybe the patience wanes more quickly with technology leaders than it does other leaders. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick show of hands. Who thinks they're at the table? You're technologists. Who thinks you're at the table? Oh, that's pitiful, guys. Come on. Who thinks that's wrong? That if you're not at the table, do you think that's wrong? Right.
Meaning you should be at the table.
Yeah. So tell them David said. Okay, go back tomorrow to work and say, I demand to be at the table. Just send them to see me. I'll back you up. Don't worry. It'll be good. Okay. Did we have a question there?
Why is there this assumption that technologists can't be leaders? Leaders are not, leadership is a big word. Why do we connect tech with leaders? You rarely hear sales leader, finance leader, or HR leader. It's a position, it's a title, it comes with a degree of authority and functional expertise. Why the concept of a tech leader?
I think there's some exceptional tech leaders, right? I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world are tech companies, and they have leaders who we all look to. Yeah? Not always for good reasons, but I think it might be a box we put ourselves in a while back, and a language that we talk. And I don't know, maybe we like the mystique a bit. Maybe there's a little bit of that. We like, I could tell you, but you wouldn't understand it. I don't know if we like that arrogance.
Technology always just been a cost. We were always, I've been doing this for 20-something years.
You don't look that old.
We were a costing. We were a hole that the business poured money into in order to get some nebulous value out of. But I don't think we've ever grown up and said, actually, there is a return on that investment. Right? We've always struggled. I deal with engineers, I have lots of them, and I deal with them all the time, and they really suck at selling themselves. They go, well, this is about, we do retrospectives, we do demos, we do all this stuff, and they just don't want to do it. They don't feel like digging themselves up, right? But they don't feel like saying, look at the value I've delivered today, look at the good stuff I've done. So to your point about selling yourselves up to the C-suite, you only deserve a seat on the table if you're willing to stand up and say, well, this is what I delivered today, right? This is the value I've added. Because if you just go in there and go, oh, we're all right, we don't suck, right? We didn't break anything this week.
Yeah.
Because this is often how technology is perceived. There's a big hole full of money that breaks stuff occasionally. Honestly, I'm talking about the way we're perceived. We're a tech-led organisation, right? We're an online only, we're an online broadcaster. We don't have a shop. We don't have any bricks and mortar. But we are still seen as like a vast cost necessary to deliver broadcast technologies to the customer that breaks stuff.
Well, take the day off with your entire department tomorrow, and then see what happens after that. Right? Yeah. Excellent. That's a good plan. That's a good plan. See if the attitude changes.
Short story. It doesn't help at all, right?
True.
We all understand that we
Ask any CFO what SAP stands for. It stands for spend and pray. That says a lot about the perception of technology.
Excellent. Okay, listen, we're going to wrap up. Our last question is always a little bit light and gives our panelists a chance to sort of expound on their darker sides a little bit, right? So, you see, they can't remember what the last question is, right? It's not that bad, don't worry. I wouldn't do that to you. Moving into 2022, which area of upcoming or growing technology has the biggest potential to impact business growth? You can't say data, AI, or machine learning because we've covered that.
Yes.
Use your
So somebody has coined the term, every company will be a fintech. I don't know who the hell said it. And with that comes regulation, a higher bar of information security, stepping up in cyber security. So I see a lot of action and a lot of need for better tooling, better systems, better processes, and frankly, cultural change internally for cybersecurity, information security. We already are highly regulated, so I already am dealing with that, but I think business models are all going to be fintechs. So that's going to be an increasingly important part of the business. Similar to like either low latency or high performing systems requirements, you leak or breach data, you're done. Like you're just done. Like your business is done. If you're of a certain size, you can sell yourself to Verizon. So yeah.
The share price goes up.
Yeah. Once you reach a certain size, of course. But no, I mean the UK is a place where you can found and grow amazing financial services based models. But there's also very low tolerance from the regulator. So I think anything that any business that's going to do that is going to have to cross-check pretty heavily with their information security, cybersecurity, compliance, tooling, and processes. So I'd say that's going to be a hot spot in the couple of years ahead.
I think that's true, but not just for financial services. I mean, surely all of us in technology don't want to be on the front page of the Times as the company that got hacked, right, or ransomware or whatever. Yeah. And I'm not going to say I feel comfortable because instantly everybody will try and attack on my website. But it is a lot of time gets invested in that area, and I think the technology is improving, but it's almost your approach, not just the technology there, right?
For sure.
Tom? Yeah, great.
Well, that was disappointing because that was what I'd originally thought I was going to say. I can tell you what it isn't. It's not 5G. It's not immersive experiences. It's not blockchain for smart contracts. And I think that might be a bit controversial in the audience, but we're talking about the 1 year horizon. I think what's going to make the biggest impact, it's actually just more of the more dull stuff that we've been talking about that is probably already very familiar in the room. It's about core engineering platforms. It's about making your engineering processes as slick and simple and easy as you possibly can, using all of the cloud native engineering kit and tools that's out there. That, I think, is the thing that's going to make the biggest impact this next year. I am, however, I'd said that it's not going to be immersive experiences and AR and VR and stuff. I am bullish on that, and we're doing quite a lot of work already in virtual reality for training and that side of things, augmented reality for field engineering support in our telco business, or so. I definitely do think that is, we've said it before, right? I think a lot of us have been here before, but I do think that's now just on the cusp. Next 5 years.
Okay, those were two sort of safe answers in a way. One very, very important on a daily basis, and the other one over here saying do what we do a little bit better. So, Milena, are we all going on VR train journeys? Can you spice this up a bit for us?
I would go long on blockchain, but yes, not within next year. That would be a few years down the line, and also Tom is not letting me, so it would have to be something else. I'm going to say in terms of engineering productivity, I think as hopeful as I am about us going back to the offices, I do think we have at least another year of quite a lot of collaborative remote work, and probably more of it kind of in the long run. So probably a lot of anything that enables collaborative real time, feels like you're almost in the same room kind of stuff. And then actually on the business value stuff, again, just to kind of spice it up and make it interesting, I think there is definitely a big trend about well-being and wellness, and I think that's one thing that kind of coming out of the lockdown, we all got a little bit more in touch with how we feel and what makes us happy and what makes us healthy and kind of all that. So from the technology angle, I'm going to say, and I guess leaning a little bit more into hardware, but anything with sensors that just kind of can figure out, kind of and that could be like all the various smartwatches and things in your phones, the sensors that are detecting kind of how you're doing and how you're feeling. But I think that's one thing that will be, permeating more and more over the next year.
Actually, so we're most of us are in the software business, but if you're in the hardware business, the next year looks really bad. Okay. Very difficult, right? There are chip shortages, there are material shortages, and forget about getting anything into the UK if you're trying to manufacture here. So we could have said that and said you're screwed if you're in the hardware business.
So how about resilience?
Yeah. Resilience in
resilience in both industries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Resilience.
Brazilians.
Brazilians? This feels like it's time for a beer. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you could put your hands together for Milena, Tom, and Jackson, our panel tonight. Thank you.